this work session of the Harwich Conservation Commission being held at 1:30 p.m. on Friday, August 22nd, 2025, in the Don B. Griffin Room at Harwich Town Hall. Participation is available both in person and online. Login instructions can always be found on the Town of Harwich website on the agenda for this meeting. Today we're going to have a talk. This is the third in a series of work sessions that the Conservation Commission is holding for discussion of soil nutrients, native plantings, herbicides, and pesticides, and hopefully this is the third of many or several more anyway. Today we have Kristen Andress from the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, whom Amy will introduce.
Thank you all for coming. The Conservation Commission, amongst being a regulatory body and dealing with properties near wetlands and what they're doing, also strives to educate folks and have these opportunities for people to come in and learn what's going on in town and what you can also be doing better on your own landscapes. So for today, we have Kristen Andres, as John said. Kristen is the Director of Education and Outreach for the Association to Preserve Cape Cod. She interacts and develops relationships with a wide range of organizations, government agencies, schools, and the general public in assessing and addressing educational needs related to conserving and preserving the Cape's natural resources. She organizes workshops, addresses civic groups, and seeks educational opportunities such as this through a variety of means. She is involved with the Native Plant Initiative and promotes ecological land care and thoughtful stewardship of our managed landscapes.
Thank you, Amy.
Kristen.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Conservation Commission, for inviting me here today. And thank you for all your hard work. Having been in the biz, so to speak, I appreciate your volunteer efforts because I know Conservation Commission work is very involved and takes a lot of your time and expertise. So I appreciate you. Thank you for having me here today. I'm going to talk to you about a few things. Since 1970, we've lost 3 billion birds. That means in the last 50 years, 29% of our breeding birds in North America have basically vanished. 432 species of North American birds are threatened with extinction, and 70 species are at the tipping point. Worldwide, more than 40% of our insect species are in decline. A third are at risk of extinction. 25% of our native wild bee species in the U.S. are also at risk of extinction. In 20 years, we've lost 22% of our butterflies. That means for every 5 butterflies seen 20 years ago, we're only now seeing 4. And the primary causes for this, for all of these biodiversity, for these decline in species, is habitat destruction and fragmentation, pesticide use, development, invasive species, and a changing climate. APCC puts out a State of the Waters each year. I think we've done, maybe this is our 6th year. And our most recent findings were 90% of our coastal embayments have unacceptable water quality. This is based on water quality data collected by others. This degraded water quality is due to an overload of nutrients, nitrogen, and in our ponds, particularly phosphorus. It's basically more nutrients than nature can handle. And these excess nutrients come from our wastewater, as we know, the bulk of it from our wastewater, and untreated stormwater, and the use of fertilizers. And from climatewise.gov, it's official, 2024 was the world's warmest year since the records began being recorded in 1850. It's been 48 years since the Earth has had a colder than average year. In Massachusetts, the average annual temperature has increased over the last 75 years on a steady increase. And what happens when we have these heat waves? We have droughts. So the lower left-hand corner map is from 2016, and I remember that year well because it's when our organization, when APCC bought its property where we are in Dennis, and I was trying to establish a meadow, a very small meadow, not much bigger than the area of the tables here. But it was so dry we had no rain that summer. And then in 2020, this is another map I just had in my records. This is again, the state's map. We were in a severe drought in the summer of 2020. Actually, that was October, and that is also a bad sign when you're in a drought in October. This is what the current drought status is for us. We are in a significant drought, a level 2 significant drought. This was declared July 1st, but it hasn't changed since when they took another look at it on August 8th. We're often, surprised when our beach day gets rained out and we think, oh, everything is all okay, but it's really not. That's not enough rain. A couple of rainy days to ruin somebody's summer vacation is not enough to recharge the aquifer. Doug Frazier wrote this article in 2021. This is kind of when we were sort of having these droughts back to back in the summer. And while it's usually dry on Cape Cod, we haven't been able to catch up. He notes here that the water year starts in September, the end of September. This is when the drawdown levels from the trees and lawns and evaporation are sort of, on the backside of that, and now we're waiting for the precipitation that really gives us our groundwater recharge, and that's the rain and snow melt from October through late spring. So water conservation is important and it's essential, and we know that towns all across the Cape have put up these signs either requiring either advisories or mandatory watering restrictions. So all that bad news is the backdrop to why your landscape plays a role. And so while all of that can be very overwhelming, loss of biodiversity and dealing with drought and bad water quality, know that there is something that you can do on your property and ways that you can advocate to help with those things, because when you make the right choices, or at least some of the choices even, you don't have to do everything, but if you choose nature-friendly landscape designs and land care practices, you can help support that local ecology in your own landscape and help protect water quality as well. So unfortunately, for the last 75 years or more, this is what our ideal of a landscape is. And so when we talk about loss of habitat, it's not just the buildings and the development that's occurred with roadways and buildings, but it's also what we've done to the landscape. This is the ideal. This is a postcard that advertised what everybody should be wanting in the 50s, which was a mansion surrounded by a lush lawn and a lot of ornamental vegetation from somewhere else in the world because of its horticultural interest. That's what we've been marketed to for many years, but we know now that this is not a sustainable landscape, particularly here on Cape Cod, where our water resource is so important, and we're also, trying to protect our local ecology, whether it's our pollinators or many of the species that are at risk. Cape Cod's a hot spot for over 130 species of rare plants and animals. So this is not a sustainable landscape, and so what I'm going to be talking to you today about a few tips on things that we can do that are more sustainable and more appropriate for those who really want to make that connection and with their choices in their landscape. So one of the ways, of course, is choosing native plants for your landscape. Native species are the true proven winners, and for all of you who frequent the retail nursery trade, you know that trade name, proven winners. They're on every table in every nursery. But really, our native plants are the true proven winners because they evolved here. They grew. These are species that are from our ecoregion, and so an ecoregion is are those areas mapped out that are the same geologic and climate characteristics. And our native plants have evolved here for the last many thousands and thousands of years since the glaciers. And so they're very used to our very poor soils. So they don't require chemical input, they don't require amendments to the soil. They don't, they're pretty low maintenance once they get established. Many are drought tolerant and salt spray tolerant. They're hardy and resilient. They support wildlife because there's wildlife, insects, and other critters that have created these very complex relationships between plant and animal over the thousands and thousands of years. And of course, they provide this essence of Cape Cod. You know, it's just beach plum, for example, this is beach plum in the dunes. This is quintessential Cape Cod. I say everyone needs to have beach plum in their yard. Like, why have something that came from another part of the world? When you live on Cape Cod, like, it's nice to sort of be in that atmosphere in which you live. And speaking of atmosphere, where do we live? Cape Cod is a pitch pine oak plant community. This is a group of plants that, again, have developed in this ecoregion that goes all the way from north of Massachusetts along the coast down to Long Island Sound. Our ecoregion is made up of a pitch pine oak community. Again, these trees and the plants that live with them are accustomed to our sandy, nutrient-poor soils. Don't let anybody tell you that pitch pines don't belong on Cape Cod. I have heard that from many a landscaper who have said, they're just nasty trees, somebody brought them here, they don't belong here. It's not true. They have found the pollen of pitch pines in core samples at the National Seashore going back thousands of years. So pitch pines and oaks have always been here. In fact, this is one of my favorite pictures here. I love to see this scene. There are very few of these scenes left, and this is the pitch pine oak canopy, and beneath it is a blanket of huckleberry. And I think there's nothing more beautiful, and I see this sort of being lost as people clear their land. And I've seen it even on town properties where the Gravely goes in and gets rid of it for some unknown reason. I've seen it in my own town. I've seen it here. This is a wonderful plant community that needs to be protected. There are species that depend on these native plant species. So huckleberry, lowbush blueberry, wintergreen, trailing arbutus, Pennsylvania sedge, and a whole host of other plants that are much more unassuming than those. But this is a very important aspect of Cape Cod, and one that we need to protect whenever we can, because it's not going to be easy to replace. So a word about pitch pines, because again, I think they're so underappreciated. They are so well adapted to our nutrient-poor soils. They're fire adapted, they have very thick bark. The dormant buds are beneath the bark on the trunk, and they're ready to sprout after a fire or damage to the crown. The pine cones provide nutritious seeds, and birds find insects in the bark crevices, and they use, of course, the pines for nesting sites as well as other critters. Oak trees. We take these trees for granted because there are so many here, but remember, this is where we live. We live in a pitch pine oak community. Our oak trees are numerous. These are the 8 oak trees that are indigenous to Cape Cod: northern red oak, scarlet oak, black oak, white oak, bare oak, AKA scrub oak. And just a note on that one, that is on the left-hand corner of the screen. Happens to be my favorite tree. It has this sad common name of being called a scrub oak when it is really a very important plant. And going back to my commission days, I remember presentations by applicants' representatives who said, it's just scrub oak, we're just going to clear it out, it's no big deal. It is not it's a very demure tree, it's quite short. But it is not scrubby in that it's trash. It's very valuable. It's part of our Atlantic Pine Barrens plant community, and it is a host plant to several insects. As are most of our oaks. They are a keystone species, which means they really hold up our ecosystems. Insects of all kinds, but we know that in butterflies and moths, Lepidoptera, are really focused. There are like 500-600 species that depend on oaks, and numerous other insects, And of course, lots of animals and birds between the acorns and, and then the whole ecosystem within the tree itself. So our oaks are not to be taken for granted. They are very important to where we live. In fact, trees in general are extremely important. Here's a list of not all of our native trees, but kind of the top ones that we would find here on Cape Cod. If you've got to put trees in your landscape, these are the ones to do it. There are so much value to our trees. They help moderate the temperature, so in these beastly hot summer days of particularly humidity and hot sun, there is nothing better than the shade of a tree. We should be protecting our shade trees in our communities as well as our own properties. They help moderate the temperature of the land. The transpiration that they give off helps cool the air. They help capture the fog when it rolls in. I've seen it on my dirt road. You can see where it drops down. So certainly in a forest or in your landscape, you are getting a little bit of moisture coming off those trees on a foggy day. Our trees also help infiltrate water into the ground and help recharge the aquifer. They capture the rain, they slow it down, they slow the velocity of the rain so it actually can soak into the ground. The rain will flow down the trunks of the trees, called stream flow, and be infiltrated into the ground.
Sorry about that.
Our trees support woodland and wetland ecosystems. As I said, they're really the infrastructure of our ecosystems. We need them in every way possible. The tall trees as well as the understory trees like shadbush and sassafras. And of course, our trees sequester and store carbon. There's a whole host of other values that trees give, but in your landscape, moderating temperature and in a lot of cases too, if they're positioned right, they're going to help you save energy in your household. They can also help buffer the winds from the north. So, but it's all about right plant, right place. So we can choose natives, but if we stick them in the wrong place, if I were to put pick something bad. If I were to put a red maple out there in the dunes, it would just not make it. It's not the place it wants to be. But if you've got a tough coastal area, you want to be planting seaside goldenrod and that good old beach plum. Again, beach plum is quintessential Cape Cod to me. It should be planted in every landscape. It's I think a great plant also for even public spaces because once established, they flower in the spring. They're drought tolerant once established. They're salt tolerant, so they're good along roadways. I remember hearing years ago that New York State was going to start planting beach plum along the thruway for that very reason. It was going to be they were salt tolerant. If you're going to plant beach plum, make sure you get more than one if you want fruit, and don't buy them from the same landscape or the same nursery because they may be the same genetic makeup, and beach plum will only be fertilized by another plant of a different genetic makeup. It's not a matter of being dioecious, male and female, it's a matter of being of a different genetic makeup. Plants are really smart, aren't they? So another tip I just want to throw in here about what it means to have a Cape-friendly or ecologically friendly landscape is to really kind of move away from the wood mulch thing. I call it the wood mulch mania, but in the landscape world, landscape architecture world, this is like, why do we do this? It's like craziness. From an ecological standpoint, it's really taking up valuable real estate from insects that need to be in the soil, like a lot of those of our native wild bees that use the soil. Plants want to live in community. They don't want to be little soldiers 10 feet apart from each other. They want to be able to interconnect beneath the ground and connect with nutrients and mycorrhizae, the value of mycorrhizae, providing them both benefits. So let's not do this. And certainly the mulch volcanoes, which are laughed at many of the symposiums that I go to, because it's just a matter of, somebody's putting mulch there year after year and never removing any, but it's bad for the trees because it's smothering the tree, and you really need to have the flare of the trunk available, have some respiration to the air. So these mulch volcanoes just bring tree rot, so not a good idea. But you do need mulch for moisture. So one way to do it is to, as you start planting, you may need some mulch around those plants to get them established, but then really what you want to do is, ideally, is have your plants knit together, and it's more of a living mulch. So you're going to plant in layers where you've got ground cover that lays low to the ground, and then other plants filling in. So really, it's just about covering the ground with the plants that you want, and more life. Wood mulch does not give life. It creates a wasteland, and it's also a huge carbon footprint. So living mulch, planting more plants that come together. So just as an example of some ground-hugging plant species, wild strawberry is a great one. I have it at my home where it's covers the ground. It's a south-facing, desolate area, and it's there every spring, and I love it. Wild ginger, another one that for dry shade. This is a beautiful plant. This is a little cluster of what's in my yard, and I love everything about it. This is American wild ginger. If you go shopping for it, you may very well find European ginger, which has a shiny leaf, same leaf shape, but it's shiny. I would encourage you to buy the American wild ginger. So look at the Latin name, make sure you get the native stuff. It has a very inconspicuous flower, which even on this slide, you can hardly see it. The little dark maroon flower is hidden beneath the leaves, and it's fertilized by ants and other ground creeping insects. So it's not a big showy flower thing, but it's a lovely dry shade ground cover. And sedges are a wonderful, they're kind of the rage right now in the ecological landscape world. There are lots of sedges out there that are native. There are a lot that aren't, so you also need to do your homework if you're going to get into sedges. But there are a lot of growers out there where you can buy online, and you can get kind of have a little sedge garden if you wanted to. Very drought resistant. This is a very common one that you will find in the nursery trade, Pennsylvania sedge, so your local nursery or like Capabilities Farm may have some still. This grows in the wild. I mean, this is how it looks. It's lovely, it's soft. So if you need you're looking for that look in your landscape design, this is a great plant to have. So a few important steps to a Cape-friendly landscape. Avoid the use of fertilizers and pesticides. So we know that our water quality is impacted by fertilizers. The big bulk of it is wastewater, but fertilizers play a role too. So if we can skip those and choose plants and landscapes that don't require them, will help that's sort of the lower hanging fruit and something more immediate. Pesticides we know have other impacts. And so for landscape purposes, try to avoid those. And pesticides, particularly when you use fertilizers for lawn treatments, a lot of times there are insecticides and fungicides, and so it's not just that you're putting nitrogen down, somebody who uses lawn treatments, but it's all that other stuff that's going on the land too, and because of our sandy soils and things are easily washed down into the groundwater or off into stormwater. And pesticides, when we talk about pesticides, it's fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, and rodenticides. We need to try to help avoid those at all costs whenever possible. And one way we can do that is to embrace a Cape Cod lawn. I've been on the Cape for my whole adult life, which is a really long time now. And I knew what a Cape Cod lawn was for the longest time, and I'm finding people are forgetting what a Cape Cod lawn is. Folks get here and they want to show their neighbors they're a good neighbor, so they redo the yard and they get the irrigation in there and they get somebody in to roll sod down and they get the lawn company there every week. That's not what we need on Cape Cod. We've got water quality issues. We really want to kind of go back to the old cultural way of having a Cape Cod lawn. And what that is really just accepting the fact that moss in a lawn is great. It's there. If it shows up, leave it. Don't lime your yard. Let the moss grow. when it rains next time, that moss also helps suck in that moisture and helps keep the soil moist around it for other things that are growing. Violets in lawn are like really terrific and cool, and they're native plants that support pollinators. And of those little sedges again, and little blue-eyed grass, and even those broadleaf plants that the whole lawn industry's been trying to get us to kill forever. Broadleaf plants are okay in a Cape Cod lawn. So a Cape Cod lawn, there's no irrigation. We're saving our water resource right there, and you're probably saving some money. No lawn treatments, saving a lot of money there and doing a lot of good by not adding those chemicals to the land. A Cape Cod lawn goes dormant in the summer, so it says a lot about you as a steward. If your lawn is brown in the summer, you're a good steward of the land. I think it speaks a lot to people who allow their Cape Cod lawn to go dormant. I always say, I heard this years ago, Cape Codders used to brag. I lived with one who said, I'm not touching that lawnmower until I have to, and they brag about how long it's been since they mowed last time. So, let's go back to that. So just mow when it's needed, and it is culturally acceptable. So let's incorporate more native plants into our landscape. And it can be daunting because the first question usually is, well, what is a native plant? And then where can I buy it? So we've created this website, CapeCodNativePlants.org, which includes a lot of plants that are endemic to Cape Cod and grow here naturally, wild species, but there are also plants that may be native to Pennsylvania or somewhere within our ecoregion, or maybe just outside the ecoregion, but do well here. The information, it's a plant selector, so when you go to the website, CapeCodNativePlants.org, you plunk in, there's a bunch of filters, and you put your information in there, and it will give you things that meet that criteria will pop up, and so it'll just kind of help you narrow down and maybe give you some ideas of what you want to go shopping for, or what seeds you want to get to plant. It also, there's a fact sheet on the information on each of the plants. We try to be as precise as possible. If anybody finds something that's not correct, we're happy to fix that. It was put together by a bunch of volunteers, and we did our best to make sure. But we also tell you if the plants are native to Cape Cod, or if they're native to another state or another part of the East Coast. Another great thing you can do, and that is really important, again, in supporting wildlife and helping improve your landscape to be more ecologically sound, is to leave the leaves. We can't say this enough. If for some reason your roommate just thinks they're messy and they don't want to see them there, then rake them into the garden beds or compost them. But if at all possible, please don't have somebody truck them away for disposal. They're full of nutrients. They're really important for soil organisms that help your plants grow. Again, if you're not using chemicals, the natural way is that there are soil organisms that are working with your plants in this symbiotic relationship that help the plants grow. When we're putting fertilizers on the ground, that's artificial life support. And so you can't have both. So leave your leaves. They're also nature's mulch. They keep the soil moist, particularly in these years of drought. And when you have rainstorms, so it's dry all summer, if you had bare soil and it's dry all summer and you put some water on it, it all beads off. It doesn't soak in very well. If you've got mulch down, particularly leaves, the leaves will help that water slowly infiltrate into the ground. Leaving the seeds will support lots of critters, birds in particular. Leaving the stems will support some insects, and of course the birds that feed on the insects. If you leave the seeds, you'll also have a nice plants that come back to you. Also conserve water, so maybe rain barrels is a good way. I know we did rain barrels at the office, and they really helped us as we were establishing new plants this season with these one spell of rain this summer. So now I know you all want to know drought-tolerant beauties, so I'm going to go through a list of some drought-tolerant plants. Whoops, there's the rain barrels. So this is what I would call my drought-tolerant beauties, some of my favorites. This is like looking at somebody's home family slides here. So I hope I hope you'll enjoy them. One of my favorites is wild columbine. Spring flowering plant. It's fine in a dry area. You don't want to put it out in where it's going to get baked in the sun all summer long. So in the springtime, it's going to flower. It does it before the leaves are out in the trees. It's what the hummingbirds look for. So just like the monarch butterflies, monarch butterfly as it migrates from Mexico to New England are looking for the next flush of milkweed. So too the hummingbirds are looking for the next flush of wild columbine. They have a very tight relationship with one another, hummingbirds and wild columbine, so it's a great plant to have in the garden. It also reseeds itself, so it's the plant that keeps on giving if you've got it in the right place. This is a combination that I really love that sort of happened at our landscape at the office. This is golden Alexanders there on the left and the wild columbine on the right. They flower at the same time. The golden Alexanders are host plant for swallowtail butterflies. And wild geranium, another springtime flowering plant. It too, dry soil is okay. Just don't get it established. And if it can have some shade a little bit of shade in the heat of the summer, and not be out in the blazing 24 hours or full day sun all day long, it'll do fine. But they're very pretty and they too will reseed. Barren strawberry, also another great plant that for that ground cover in particular, for that lower level that you're trying to achieve as you try to cover the ground and keep moisture in. Flowering spring, early spring, and not a great plant for, again, full sun. Ours got really crispy when it lost the shade of a tree that came down. So if it's got some shade, a few hours of shade, it does best. Even when it gets crispy and brown and dies, it looks like it's dead, it will come back in the spring. So this is a good option. This is my front walkway, and just to point out how, I don't know, a few things. I'll start with the top right there. You'll see lavender. Well, that's not native, but I think that's okay in a drought tolerant, or when you've got a drought location and you're just experiencing a lot of drought and you want something that's going to hang in there all summer and provide you summer flowers. Lavender's a nice plant that really supports a lot of generalist pollinators, so I'm good with it, and I also like walking up against it as I go in my front door because I like the aroma of it. Then across the walkway to the left is foxglove beard tongue. I'll have a picture of this later on, but this is another plant that's pretty drought tolerant. Again, would like a little bit of shade or maybe be shaded by some other plants, but that will flower in June. And then next down the pathway is butterfly milkweed. Actually on either side, that's butterfly milkweed, Asclepias tuberosa. Super drought tolerant. Will reseed. It's got the little pods, so the plants will show up elsewhere in your yard, but if you don't like where they show up, you just dig them up and relocate them. But it's a wonderful drought-tolerant native plant, and you'll find it in the wild in really, kind of desolate old field areas. And then in the bottom right front there is little blue stem. Boy, it was super looking this summer. Just that. There's a reason why they call it little blue stem. The grass is wonderfully blue. And I would recommend that if you want ornamental grasses, that you use native grasses and not some that come from elsewhere. So here's that wild strawberry again. This is how it looks in my yard up in the top left corner, and there's all my oak leaves that have just fallen there and doing the natural mulch thing. And of course, those wild strawberries provide fruit for all sorts of critters, including me. Hyssop leaf boneset is one of my favorite plants now because it is such a super pollinator magnet, and it's done fine through this whole summer. I've got several of these that have come up in the yard because it does reseed itself. It's not crazy, it doesn't take over, but it will reseed. But it's a meadow plant, so it gets tall. It's about almost 4 feet or more tall. So it's a long, spindly stem that just lingers there in the yard for quite a while, and then all of a sudden, it starts budding up, and it'll be in full blossom now, this late summer. And this is why the pollinators love it so much, because there's not much else going on. Bearberry is actually a shrub. It's a woody plant that grows close to the ground. There's some fantastic areas of it along Route 6. And it pops up in the most tough spots. There's even some along, I live on a little dirt road, and boy, there's some that lingers there right at the edge of kind of the wood, if you want to, underneath the trees, and right along the edge of the roadway. So if you can get this established in your yard, it's fantastic. Golden groundsel, this is a pretty tough plant. It'll do well in shade, it'll do well in full sun. As you can see in the top right picture there, the leaves stay low to the ground, and then in the spring, it shoots up these tall stems, about 18 inches or so, with these bright aster-like flowers at the top. So it's a real pow in the springtime. And the foliage hangs in there. The plants do pretty well during drought. Again, the flowers will go by. You can remove them if you want. If you leave the seeds, they will reseed and it will spread around. Don't put it in your English garden. Put this in a tough spot, like maybe on a little bit of a slope, or, somewhere where you just need something to fill in, that maybe somebody drives over the corner of your driveway or something. Like, this could hold up to that. Here's that penstemon, that foxglove beard tongue. Again, does fine and, dry, would like a little bit of shade. This is our front yard at the office in June. We do have shade there for probably more than half of the day, and it is just so happy, and the bumblebees absolutely adore it. And of course, the butterfly milkweed, the Asclepias tuberosa, I just think that gives the biggest bang for its buck for a hot, dry, tough, sandy location, and lots of insects need it and adore it too. Common milkweed, again, not for the faint of heart. This needs to go in some place where it's a little bit wild, and I have some growing in my driveway because I don't care what my driveway looks like, because I'm more interested in the insects that it attracts. But it's very fragrant too. You can't beat the fragrance of common milkweed. And we know that the monarchs rely on milkweed. They need it as part of their life cycle. Without milkweed, we wouldn't see monarch butterflies, and there are a whole host of other insects that also rely on milkweeds in general. Here's the milkweed caterpillar. I think he looks like a piece of candy. In general, goldenrods are extremely drought tolerant. Our front yard at the office, I mean, we could go back at 2020, COVID, right? Hardly anybody was at the office, didn't get a lot of maintenance. I let the goldenrod sort of take over. And then when we had these summers of drought, and 2020 was a drought too, I couldn't bear to start managing it because nothing else was really making it, and I wanted to have some color in the front yard, so I just let it go. Goldenrods are so important. Over 24 native species of goldenrod in New England. They're necessary for the life cycle of about a dozen wild species in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. It's a total fable and misconception that goldenrod causes hay fever. It absolutely does not. I don't care if your doctor tells you you're allergic to it, just don't eat it, I guess. It's wet pollen. It's not pollen that's airborne. If you have sniffles at this time of year when goldenrod is flowering, it's the ragweed that's bothering you because that's the airborne pollen that's irritating people's noses. Goldenrods support 110 species of caterpillars, and the monarch butterflies especially depend on it for nectar this time of year, as we have this last generation that's now going to need to be fortified as it makes its way back to Mexico. Asters, I always say goldenrod and asters are like peanut butter and jelly. The goldenrods start to flower first, and the asters are right behind, and there's such a wide variety of asters, and if you can't help but be wowed by the different varieties of asters and the lovely colors of purple. And they both together have the greatest value for insects. Spotted bee balm, not indigenous to Cape Cod. It's found in the wild in Plymouth County, but we love it. It is so drought tolerant. It's really cool looking. It's like these little pineapple plants on top of each other. It's got a funky flower to it. Pollinators absolutely love it. Carpenter bees in particular find this plant very easy to land on and get their nectar. So if you're looking for a pollinator plant in a droughty summer, this is the one to have. It also reseeds. It's called horse mint. It's in the mint family. So it reseeds, so it too is not for the faint of heart, but it's not troublesome. Again, if you have where you don't want it, it's easily pulled out, or if you want to relocate it. But it has no problem with drought. And of course, that little blue stem that I mentioned is just so spectacular. I think, I don't know if you can make out the colors in this picture, but it's beautifully blue, and then in the fall, oh, there it is, along with the blue along the walkway at our office. It's a wonderful ornamental plant. And then in the fall, it has this wonderful gossamer like seeds, and it turns this brilliant brown. Once you are able to identify this plant, you will see that it's everywhere on Cape Cod, and that's good. But bring it into your yard. It's a great plant. Now, just a bit about our native grasses. They're clumping grasses. So I know that on the flyer it said native grass mixes. So there's no seed mix that is native grasses because they're clumping grasses. So if you, I mean, there may be a mix out there, but you're not going to plant, the typical lawn is not going to be planted with native grasses because our native grasses are clumping. They're not spreading. The Europeans brought their spreading fescues and stuff from Europe because that's what they wanted to feed their animals. So ours are warm season grasses, so they only germinate when it's warm out. And so if you were doing a traditional lawn, that's why they tell you if you're planting a traditional lawn, do that in the spring or the fall, because those European grasses are cool season grasses. So our warm season grasses, again, are clumping and be great for ornamental grasses, and certainly you can have them in your front yard. I do too. And you probably could mow them if you really wanted to do that to them, but that's not their best use. Prairie dropseed is another native grass. This is kind of cool for, it stays low. It's kind of, it's just this little mop of grass, and it will send up some very delicate flowers, flowers of a grass. This is also a very important plant for insects that need places to overwinter, like morning cloak or some of the skippers. Again, grasses are pretty drought tolerant. And it takes a lot to beat switchgrass to death. Switchgrass is prevalent too everywhere around the Cape. And once you get to recognize it, you too will come to love it, like the little blue stem. It's beautiful when it's flowering, which it is right now, and then when it goes dormant and turns this beautiful brown with its curly, broad leaves, I think it's pretty spectacular. A lot of Route 6 had some replanting with switchgrass. It comes in, there are various cultivars, so if you've got a tiny place, a limited size space, you can probably find some that are cultivars that are smaller in stature or have a certain color to them. There is a cultivar called Coastal Breeze, which is our local ecotype, and Capabilities Farm carried that for a while. But switchgrass is a great ornamental grass to use. And we are all just loving our purple lovegrass right now. It is spectacular. It's kind of washed out here on the screen here in the meeting room, but it is purple. And if you pay attention, you will see that it is along the roadsides here and in the median strip. And it's a great grass to plant in groupings, not by itself. So before it flowers, it's kind of got that broadleaf blade to it, which makes you almost want to pull it out like crabgrass, but don't do it because it's purple lovegrass, and when it goes to flower, it's pretty spectacular. So this is our office. We've been working at sort of healing the land after the construction when we renovated the barn. And I've been calling this our hell strip. This is the retaining walls to the lower level. And it gets a lot of sun, and of course it's got these rocks around it, so there's a lot of heat there. But there's the purple lovegrass, and there's a few other things in there that we're really seeing that can deal with the heat. Mountain mint, pycnantheums, any of the mountain mints, they're super drought tolerant as well. This is also a big pollinator attractor. You'll find that plants that are drought tolerant, many of them have this silver foliage because it helps reflect the sun's light. So that's the advantage of little blue stem, and here we have now mountain mint. And here we have pussy toes. There's a couple of, we were very excited. We've planted pussy toes in our garden. We were able to get them from a wholesaler. This is the plantain pussy toes. There's also field pussy toes. And these will flower like this. So the foliage stays low, and then they'll be shooting up these stems with these little flowers. But again, that silver foliage, they're drought-tolerant plants. And I think this is my last example of a good dry shade, drought-tolerant plant. This is white wood aster. If you go for the walk in the woods anytime about now, you'll start seeing this in the, I don't know, understory of trees. It's been super, again, this is not for faint of heart, but it covers the ground. It's about 18 inches high off the ground, and it fills right in. And in our location, it's competing with soapwort, which if you know what that is, you don't want it. This is just a really good plant to cover the ground. Ground covers don't all have to be carpet plants. White wood aster can be your ground cover underneath a tree because it loves shade, it loves dry shade. You don't have to irrigate it, obviously. It spreads, and you get, right now we're starting to get white flowers, and again, pollinators absolutely adore it. So that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
I think what we're gonna do is give commissioners a chance to question or comment, and then people in the room and anyone who, well, there's quite a few people online as well, so we'll start with Sophia, unless, Amy, you have something to start with.
I'll be real brief. Just wanted to thank Kristen, and that was a great presentation. Really showcased how we can all be part of a solution. Yes, things like stormwater and wastewater are the big culprits when dealing with our water quality issues, but you can do things on your own property to help alleviate that as well. And as important as that is too, just for an example, I've been converting my yard over years, and I will be for more years. But my neighbors always comment when they're walking by, oh, you have so many butterflies, or if I have a barbecue, oh, you have so many lightning bugs in that season. We don't have any. And I just say, well, it's because I leave part of my yard natural. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. I have invasives and stuff like everybody else does, but no, I thought it was a great presentation and really highlighted the importance of natives to our landscape, so thank you.
Just thank you so much for everything you do. I think you're such an amazing resource for our community, for professionals and for homeowners, and just really great work. I use your website all the time when I'm trying to pick stuff out. And yeah, I think also that I appreciate in your presentation that there are things like lavender, like there are little kind of like exceptions here and there that, you know, it's like if it's the right fit and it brings you joy. Something that helps me is sort of like, my husband really loves his small lawn. Like we have the rest, almost all of our property is natural, and he's got a tiny square of lawn, and we just put compost on it, and leave the clippings and stuff like that. And it's more of like an area rug versus wall carpeting. So I think sometimes for people just sort of choosing, you don't have to do the entire garden, you don't have to redo your entire landscape, but you can kind of start with areas that where you can experiment and see what native plant works best, and using a resource like that website would be great. And I just really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great presentation, thank you.
Thanks.
Inspiring.
Good, thank you.
That's all, thank you.
Only question I have is on the CapeCodNativePlants.org, that website, does it have information on where to purchase a lot of these plants?
It doesn't, but I know I kind of alluded that it would. But I would say that all of our nurseries today carry natives way more, in a greater variety, and more of them than they did 20 years ago when we kind of started this, when everybody started talking about it. And if there's certain plants that you're looking for, I would call your local nursery that you like to frequent, and they can likely get them. American Beauties are being grown in Connecticut these days, and there's a lot of, we're going to have a program, we're going to be encouraging locally grown natives, and so I think you'll see even more.
Okay.
But
And you
Thank
do a
you.
plant sale too, don't you?
oh, yes, and there's always some good plant sales every spring, and a lot of them are featuring native plants, and of course, APCC, I think we've done it, 4 or 5 years now, so that's in June. So that's always an option too.
Great, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Can I just have questions, and we'll go to the audience. I have 2 questions. One is
Okay.
following up on Wayne's question about nurseries. I'm wondering whether APCC keeps a list of landscape professionals who could help those people who aren't doing their own gardens, but want someone who doesn't just make the European-style ornamental landscapes, who could help people convert their yards if that's, or care for a yard that needs help caring for.
Mhm. I often have people ask me that very question, and I do send off a list of folks that I am familiar with, who I know have an ecological background, and, that's their focus. So happy to share that with, I don't have it posted on the website, but I'm happy to share that with anybody.
So people could find your email on the
Yes.
website and make a request.
Yes.
Okay, my other question is more about history. You said early on that the Cape Cod landscape is pitch pine and oak. I've certainly read and heard that when Europeans arrived here 400 years ago, there was mature hardwood forest here, and I'm just wondering, trying to sort of put those 2 ideas together.
Mhm.
Was it a large pitch pines? Is that an oxymoron, a large pitch pine? But what was here 400 years ago when the landscape was being managed by Native Americans as opposed to Europeans?
There is a paper, I don't have all of that right off the top of my head, but there is a paper that came out through the National Seashore about the historic vegetation on Cape Cod. And I'd be happy to share that with you if that's something, I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I'd love to read that paper.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, our climate was cooler, and so pitch pines certainly could have lingered here much longer. We are at the northern part of their range, but they might have, I don't know, maybe they were, but they didn't just arrive here yesterday like a lot of folks wouldn't want you to believe, so.
Okay, thank you. So we can go to people in the room. Someone has their hand up, so go ahead.
Local ferns.
Examples of local ferns that would be good in the garden would be, there's eastern wood fern, which can take a little bit of shade and is certainly good with dry. Ferns aren't always all moisture, need their feet in moist soil. Hay-scented fern, if you've got a place where you don't mind if it spreads, that's a great dry plant. Certainly in the wild landscapes, we see bracken fern all the time. I don't know that that's anything we can get through the nursery trade, but if you've got bracken fern, enjoy it, keep it. Lady fern does really well. That'll even take a little bit of sun. I think that was in one of the pictures that I had there. Thanks. Yeah, ferns are important. And then, of course, there's royal fern, cinnamon fern, yeah.
Are you all set? Susan?
To follow up on John's question, is there a reason you don't list the firms that you know do ecological landscaping well on the website? Like, from the Pond Coalition standpoint, we'd love to point them to the website.
Sure. I don't know, I'd have to talk to my boss about that. I kind of do it as a, like a personal thing. I don't want our organizations not necessarily endorsing these companies because we're not, yeah, so it's my personal email, I mean, not my personal email, but I make a personal communication to somebody and say, here's a list of folks that I know that have this as their background. I'm sure there's others out there. I'm not saying that this is the only, and I think if our organization put it on the website, it would look like we were promoting these folks, and that's, you know, I want to try to connect people, so, if that makes sense.
Go ahead.
Is Queen Anne's lace native?
No. But it seems like, you know, there are a lot of insects that use it, so I'm not, you know, I don't think there's any concern that it's like invasive or that we have to get rid of it or anything. You know, there are a lot of insects that use it, a lot of pollinators.
What
in
about
most
Cape Cod rambling roses?
You know, if you've got a rambling rose and it's kept in its place, that's fine. It's the multiflora rose that we all get wowed by when it's in flower, when we drive along the road or you smell it. But that's the one that we really need to control because it's, you don't want that to take over, because it does.
And where can you buy beach plum plants?
A lot of the nurseries carry beach plum because for wetland permitting purposes, beach plum tends to be something that that a conservation mitigation plan might incorporate. So check around at your nurseries, and again, just if you can try to buy them at different places, that might ensure that you have.
And is this the same beach plum, like my aunt used to make beach plum
Yes,
jelly?
yes.
And they were everywhere.
Yes, and they're ripe right now.
So
Anybody?
these plants are the same,
Yes.
oh, good.
So native plants obviously have adapted to historic climate patterns, but as the climate changes and gets warmer and we have more droughts, how do you see the use of native plants and landscaping changing?
I think there's certainly a lot of discussion of that in the professional world, in the landscape professional world. I think there's a lot of discussion about, you know, using plants from further south. I mean, we know that there have been lots of models out there that show that we're going to be much more like the Carolinas if we're not almost already. And so plants from further south to expand that native plant palette, I think is great. And I think there's a big difference between what we plant in our landscapes, our managed landscapes, versus restoration projects where you're doing an ecological restoration. And I think your own landscape, I think you make your best choices and you plant natives that are suited and that are going to do well for you. Oak leaf hydrangea, native to Georgia, but it does great here. You know, personally, I'm okay with that. I've got one in my yard. It fills a great space. I'd rather have that than invasive, you know, invasive honeysuckle or burning bush or any number of other things. So I think there are certainly species from further south that will do well here, and why not use them if they're native and if we can support wildlife as well.
Patrick?
You know, in this room, you have believers, followers, and doers, right? There's no one in this room puzzling about what it is you're saying. It's the people that aren't in this room that need to hear exactly what you're saying, right? The developers who are obliging homeowners who are clueless, right? So what can we do on sort of the regulation level to start implementing exactly what it is you're suggesting? Can we change bylaws or zoning? Where do we start so that what you're telling us is implemented across the county? And it's going to take regulation, right?
having been a former regulator, yeah, there is value in regulation, to a point, but a couple of ideas. Certainly, conservation commissions already ask their applicants to come up with planting plans that incorporate natives, in their area of jurisdiction or in the first 50 or whatever the local regulation is. So that's a great start. One of the other things that is kind of always been in the back burner of my mind and never been able to do it is I'd really like to see planning boards kind of embrace a native plant palette. I'd like to see a Cumberland Farms or whatever commercial property, the local bank or whatever is being renovated to incorporate native plants that look like Cape Cod. You probably all know that the town of Orleans just passed a resolution, or maybe it's stronger than that, or a bylaw, so that native plants in public lands, everything should be native where possible. And so I think it's always small steps, but I think that if we can, I think it's great for communities to embrace that native plant thing, because let's keep Cape Cod looking like Cape Cod instead of, again, anywhere USA where, because a lot of the plants that go into commercial properties and go into properties that are being sold, residential properties, are those sort of cheap, it's the Bradford pear, which will be on the prohibited list at the end of this year, and a whole host of those other plants that have turned out to be invasive, but they're used all over the country, and they're fast growing and they're cheap, and that's why they end up in commercial and residential properties that are being turned over. So, I don't know, does that help?
It's a starting point. I like the planning board idea, but they're going to say, well, there's no regulations, we can't. Planning boards follow the rules, right?
So, I don't remember, go ahead.
Just speaking for Harwich, so I'm a conservation agent, and I work often with the town planner, and we have to review projects that go in front of planning board, and even if it's not near wetlands, I've always taken a look at planting plans and just made suggestions. What they do with that is, is their prerogative, but what I am finding over the past few years in particular, and there's a project that is in front of the planning board right now, that I kind of didn't expect them to kind of embrace the idea of using native plants. It was really a project where I thought it was gonna be pretty cookie cutter. It's gonna be on Route 28 in Harwich, and I encouraged them to use native plants. I said I would review their list, and also talked about right plant, right place, and not putting things like, shrub winterberry in a drought area, or a dry area. And they came back with a plan that was very appropriate with very appropriate natives for 75% of the landscaping plan in an area that's not even within our jurisdiction. So that's just one example, but we're starting to see, albeit slow, a change. And more people are being receptive to it. But we do make, at least here in Harwich, there is that level of consideration given to the planning board on their projects.
I was just gonna suggest, because my street has been real estated recently, and even if real estate brokers could hand out a list of native plants, because the people who've moved here have no idea, never crossed their mind at all. They should see what they put in. I mean, there's not a native plant anywhere, anywhere.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're always happy to give resources to realtors. We can't make anybody do anything. If they're already, same with landscape contractors or anybody, if it's part of their business model and they're personally interested in the environment, there are lots of resources out there, and if APCC is one of them. If we don't have the answer, we know where there are a lot of other answers out there, a lot of other trainings and education opportunities. So it's always about getting the message out, and particularly in this area where we've got a lot of property turnovers, it's always about educating folks as to what's valuable and how our water is important, et cetera, so. called job security.
Anyone else? Anyone else in the room? Is there anyone online who would like to ask a question or make a comment?
Was there anything in chat, Matt?
No,
Okay.
technical issue.
Thank you.
Well, it seems like we're done. We've exhausted the questions for now, but as Kristen says, you can send her an email or contact through the APCC website if you have other questions. But thank you very much, Kristen. It's
Thank you.
very good.
And before you all leave, I'll just make a plug. The Conservation Commission is looking for 2 new members. So you, if anybody you know is interested in being on the commission, please give me a call, send me an email, and I'm happy to talk you through it. So while we do a lot of regulatory work, we also do a lot of other, are involved in a lot of other things too, so.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we need to formally adjourn.
Need to motion and, yeah.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn this seminar on plants.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourned.